Hello and welcome to the latest episode in our Better Riding series. So we've joined forces with Honda Motorcycles UK to create this series of self-help videos, as well as written content packed full of tips and advice and simple but useful exercises designed to help motorcycle riders of all experiences and all abilities to get more from our riding. Because it's not just you, it's me as well. It provides expert information, practice drills that help increase rider confidence and machine control, all those skills that supplement sort of traditional post-test training techniques. And we've also teamed up with professional motorbike coach Mark McVeigh, an experienced rider coach, ex-MotoGP engineer, riding academy owner for over 20 years, and the inventor of the motoDNA rider training tech. Mark has taught more than 10,000 riders to be smarter, safer and more confident, and here he is, excited to be with us. G'day, Mark.
G'day, Michael. How are you going today?
Yeah, fine and dandy, thanks. I'm all right. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. Excited to do the last one of the year.
Yeah, final one of this series. We'll be back with more next time out. But Mr. McVeigh, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we are on about common biking errors. So in this video, we're going to be looking at two common biking errors. And one's quite big and a kind of fundamental cause of many crashes. And then the other one's smaller, but an important detail that will get you thinking.
So by the end of this video, hopefully everybody will go, right, I'm going to go out to my bike, make some adjustments. I'm going to think about my riding. There'll be no more accidents at all involving motorbikes.
100%. That's the plan. So first we're going to talk about motorbike technology, okay? So, we've got these awesome modern motorbikes, lean sensitive traction and ABS, slide control, incredible tires and suspension. But despite all this technology, riders are still having the same crashes, Michael.
It's true, isn't it? I mean, you think about how motorcycles have developed and the technologies have developed. I often speak to tyre manufacturers to say, how do you keep up with the advancement in power and torque and suspension and electronics? And they just said, look, we've got to be ahead of the game. But when you think about, I don't want to hijack your point here, by the way, but when you think about riders of today, I mean, we know because we've got all the insurance data, of course, from our Bennett's archives upstairs, that the average motorcycle rider in the UK is certainly in their 50s, mid-50s, and I think it's the same for pretty much all of Europe. And then if you count that back into when they might have passed their test, if, for example, they were 20, let's say, 34 years ago, what were motorbikes like then? And what were tyres like then? And what was ABS like then? And but go on, so tell me, why are all these crashes happening?
Well, I guess if you think about it, for example, you've got lean sensitive ABS, but riders aren't taught to brake in a corner. We've got high-tech motorcycles, but low-skilled riders. And the thing is, it's not even close. When we look at these incidents, this is kind of super basic level. And, the research backs it up.
We've seen those videos in previous episodes, and yet they still make me wince.
They do. They're classics, absolute classics.
So tell me about this research. Where have we got that from? And how am I going to be? It's a good job I'm sitting down, right? I feel like I'm about to
get slammed. Yes, it should worry us, actually. So, if we look at this research, this is a European Transport Safety Council. And, these are the total motorbike traffic fatalities, so about 3,000 there. And if you look, there's about 1,200 and collided with a car, and then about 1,200 there was no other vehicle involved. So there's lots of kind of research around, but if you pull the information out, common motorcycle crashes, 50% single vehicles, so riders are by themselves. 65% of those crashes are on curves, and 85% of those crashes had no evidence of braking. And then just to throw in another stat, 25% of those incidents, the road was not clean. So, there could be a bit of gravel there could be a pothole, there could be, the rider could have went in just a little bit too hot. It could be a car across the white line or something that surprised the rider. But, they're super basic crashes.
Like some of those statistics are really quite scary. I mean, there's things that we as riders can't mitigate for, potholes, other cars on the other side of the road, for example. But a lot of crashes seem to be happening where we can do something about it.
Yeah, exactly right. And I see this every day in our school, okay? What we do in our school is we recreate common crash scenarios, and then we teach the riders the correct technique so their reaction is intuitive, okay? And that's really what the root cause is. The riders aren't doing the practice. And I got a couple of clips here that kind of point this out. I'll get the next one going here. You can see this rider. I'll just pause it there. But you can see there's this is in a closed road, just to make it really clear. It's a training ground. So you can see there's me. I've got this big long flag, so I'm away from the rider, and then there's this little red cone. Okay, now that red cone is kind of indicating there's a car across that white line. So we're recreating that accident situation, and the rider is instructed to swerve and brake when I raise the flag, okay? So we'll just continue that through, see what happens. So that's kind of typical what happened. Now this is probably the third or fourth attempt. The first attempt, second attempt, often the riders don't do anything, which matches the statistics.
So he didn't do a great deal other than had a bit of a swerve.
That's it. He had a bit of a swerve. And then if we go to this next one, this is kind of like before and after. Now you can see here where the shade is with the tree. So this is hours later, practice. Okay. And we'll run this one through and see what happens.
Much better.
So it's just practice. That's all it is. And we see this every day at the school. The riders come, we do these drills, recreating these accident crash scenarios. And it's kind of like just the aviation principles. If there's a bump in the plane, let's recreate it. We've got data that we can use too. So it's just practice, and unfortunately, if you don't do the practice, then the first time you kind of got to do something is on the road and in the real world. That's the problem.
And it can be too late then, can't it? So what we're trying to say, and a lot of this series, a lot of what we're talking about throughout the whole series is all about practice, isn't it? We talk a lot about 10,000 hours to mastery, but only 20 hours to get your motorbike license.
Exactly.
Here's the evidence, isn't it? We're seeing the evidence in actual raw data, but also with teachings and practicing like this. The more you practice, the more muscle memory. I don't know what this is supposed to be, but muscle memory will then help you in the situation as and when, if you find yourself face to face with a car on the wrong side of the road or a pothole.
Yeah, exactly. And this is kind of the next one, just kind of shows, what we're after, nice, quick swerve and on the brake, stop in a short distance. And, the bikes are, a lot of the bikes are a couple of 100 kilos, and you start moving around and you're turning left, which is kind of against the cornering force. We often find riders are stumbling, they kind of almost fall over, because they haven't experienced that before. So the next time they do it, they don't, almost fall over. They kind of catch the bike and then just practice. It's just practice makes perfect.
Must be a little frustrating for the manufacturers, not necessarily of the motorbikes, but also of the technology. Bosch being a prime example. So they'd spend, years and years and years creating all this technology that will save lives, that will stop motorbikes faster and safer. And yet the operators, and we're all included in this, we just simply don't practice enough.
Yeah, that's 100%. And one of the things that we're working on is to support this RS technology. This advanced rider systems that we have on the bikes. You've got this kind of the line, all the stuff in the cars now is kind of feeding onto the bikes, right? The bike's automatic kind of braking. You've got the corner and lean sensitive ABS, but all these systems are kind of reactive. And really the tier one suppliers, like Bosch and Autoliv and companies like that, they realize, well, we kind of need to invest in the rider as well. So there's really good timing for schools. It's kind of like making the motorbike riders software match the motorbikes hardware. The riders have still got to throttle, brake, steer, look, and understand the level of grip, like that emergency brake. And the bike's got ABS, but if you're not squeezing the lever hard enough, you're not triggering the ABS, or you're not reaching the maximum performance of that bike.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember when we came to a school that you did over here in the UK, and the demonstration was, I don't remember how fast we were traveling. Was it 30 miles an hour?
Yeah.
30 miles an hour straight line, pull it as hard as you can. Okay, it's an emergency stop. We all know about that because we should have done it we will have done it to get our motorcycle license. But as I mentioned earlier on, as we've mentioned previously, when was the last time you did your emergency stop? When was the last time anyone practiced doing that, especially with modern bike technology?
Exactly. Yeah, well, we're going to talk a little bit about tire grip now. So, this is just kind of like a typical figure eight, and this is actually a good rider. So I'll just let this run through, and then we'll just dissect it a little bit. But this is what they call a traction circle or GD diagram. And if we kind of, let's have an arrow here so we can kind of talk around it. But the outside of the circle is 1G, and that's kind of like the limit of the tire. Over that, the tire will slip. And this rider is one of the best riders, the street riders that's been through the school and done this drill. But you can see here, when the braking, it's really, not even half a G. They're so far away from the limit of the tire. And the riders are kind of instructed to, ride at 90% of their ability. Show us what you can do on your bike, ride with gusto. And then again, there's a little bit of carrying the sort of front brake, but then, the brake goes off as they lean the bike in, and you can see a little bit of sort of, lateral G then in the corner, which is probably about half a G, but still, so far away from the limit of the tire. And then a little bit of acceleration, as they pick the bike up, and then they ride off. And yeah, it's just really interesting. And the same thing again, it's just practicing and understanding that kind of grip that's available from your bike, Michael.
We talked about it, didn't we, in a previous episode, about grip and understanding grip and how tires operate and using suspension and brakes in order to enhance grip. But to clarify, that graph that we just saw there, that was a good rider performing very, very well, and yet were only using half of the amount of grip available through the tire. Is that right?
Exactly, 100%. And it's just practice. We keep going on about it, but this is what's happening. We can't sweep it under the carpet, So this is like the most common biking error, not understanding grip. So by doing these drills, practicing, that's how we get to understand the grip more. And then you're like unlikely then to have that survival reaction and panic when you have a situation on the road.
So it's a bit like, going out and spending lots of money on the best tires that you think are ideal for your bike, and then not using them at all to their ability.
Yeah, I mean, tires are like the best insurance policy, aren't they? If you buy a tire and it's like wood, it's not much insurance. But you buy the best tires that you can. You're always balancing that endurance, and the longevity versus the grip, right? But yeah, when the conditions are trickier, when you got to do a stop, you'll be glad that you bought something that has a better grip, right? I'm going to show you some stuff here, and I want you to try and have a think about what the problem is here, okay? So this rider's doing this is one of the other drills actually that they should practice, the kind of straight line avoidance drill.
Okay.
And you can see this one is, essentially the size of the car, those two red cones, and the rider's got to come through and swerve around and get around the car.
Because I've done that drill. I've done that with you.
Yeah.
So it was really important, because the first time I did it was on a CBF 125, or was on a 650?
I think the 650, yeah.
Probably so. But it was, I mean, again, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I'm fairly experienced as a rider. I've done a lot of different I've ridden many, many bikes, but even in that situation, it was a little bit daunting to kind of understand what it is that the bike can do versus what I think I am capable of. and clearly the bike's a lot more capable than I was in the first situation when you do that. But again, that replicates, in theory, if you've not done any practice, and then you are faced with a situation where you do need to swerve to avoid a car, you just don't have the confidence in the machine or your own ability, do you? And yet, I tried it 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden, I could brake a lot harder, I could swerve more fiercely, and the bike would just go up, up, up. And as soon as you've got momentum on a bike, it wants to sit up. So you keep the momentum going, it wants to sit up, and that kind of helps you avoid the car. And it's just, I'm repeating what we've been talking about through the whole series. Practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, but practice certainly helps.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And the key thing is that your reaction's intuitive, Michael, because you don't have time on the road to think about it, right? It's got to be automatic, and the only way to do that is practice. So, 100%.
Go on then. You were going to show me something that was going to quiz me. You were going to quiz me.
You might be guessing that I'm excited about this next one because I find it fascinating. But was doing some emergency braking drills, high speed, so over 70 miles an hour. So I'll just run through and see if you can kind of guess what the problem is here.
Okay.
So I'm a bit
it's a straight line, emergency stop, you raised your flag, he's come down the hill. It looks all right to me.
I'm looking for the ABS, and there's no ABS, and so then we're looking at the lever, so a little bit kind of suspicious. I've been training for a long time. Going, okay, why is the ABS? And this guy's a good rider. I've had him most of the day. Two guys that day, and they were really good riders. So yeah, just go, what the heck's going on here? So we're trying different things, and then this is the next one.
Oh, he's doing a stop at the end. So he was braking harder, was he that time?
Well, he's trying to figure it out, so not so much braking harder, but maybe at the end, he squeezed so I was trying to get him to pull up, a little bit quicker. So I'm saying, squeeze the lever 5% harder, in the last kind of 5 meters. So that's kind of what he was doing. He's playing about with that, and of course he got the little endo, the little stoppy. But yeah, we started doing a bit of a deeper dive, and this is kind of what happened next. So we got Gareth and Tyler here. We're doing high-speed emergency stops today, and we're just looking at Tyler's lever. So you can see it's a shorty, and he's using 2 fingers. But the most leverage, that's the pivot point, and then this is where you get the most leverage. So Tyler's kind of squeezing in here, and you reckon you kind of like max pressure?
Yeah, I was pulling as hard as I could.
Pulling as hard as he could, but the bike can stop quicker because we're not getting as much leverage on it. So what we need to do is change the lever, or else move this that way. So you're basically squeezing near the end of the lever. So the longer the distance between where you squeeze and the pivot point, which is here, that's where you're going to get the most pressure. So this is what I say every day. People's levers, handlebars, the ergonomics of the bike are not set up properly. And, something as critical as your front brake lever, you can see that, Tyler, he's put a short lever on. I like those short levers myself, but kind of in the wrong position, right? And then he's got a little mirror there, and it's compromised his braking.
So we just can't reach the right section of the brake lever, is that right?
Yeah. So I've got a little bit of a diagram here just to explain it in a bit more detail. And it's about mechanical leverage. So if we move this, we'll have this arrow. So you can see he was kind of pushing or pulling the lever here, right? And this is the pivot point. So you can see how short that is, right?
Yes.
And then this is where he really should be pulling near the end. And the difference is mechanical leverage. And this master cylinder isn't designed, to be pushed with that kind of leverage. It's designed, for a longer lever. This is not a stock brake lever. But what we were saying was, where the lever mounts, which is here, he could move that, along the handlebar to try and get the lever, because he's using 2 fingers, which are kind of about here. So,
yes.
Really, really interesting. And we see this a lot in the school.
Very interesting. That's you said the word compromise. That's perfect, isn't it? Because it's a perfect description, but where he's got the mirror and where his fingers naturally sit, and if he's using 2 fingers, then I'm repeating what you've just said, but just for my own purpose and for the viewers' purposes, just to sort of reiterate how important it is to pull the brake lever in the right place, so moving your hand around and playing around with it.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the other guys was there. He was using 4 fingers, which we don't like. But they do teach that a lot at the licensing. But the problem is then you're kind of only holding on with your thumb, the handlebar with your thumb. And, you might need to swerve or try and control the bike. So that's why we like two fingers. And, with the brakes on modern bikes, they're the size of dinner plates. They're massive on most bikes. So the braking power is there. You can use 1 finger in a lot of bikes these days. So I think it's just a little bit, old fashioned to use 4 fingers. But yeah, for sure, you need to think about this and where you're squeezing the lever, or like Tyler, you're not even going to trigger the ABS.
It's a really good example. It's something that I'll certainly take away from this episode. Maybe when I nip home on the Grom, I can
nice.
work because I'm a bit of a 2-fingered braker. Again, just because I know a bit about brakes, and I tend to trust how big those discs and those cylinders are.
Yeah, perfect. Well, yeah, that's kind of what we're covered today, Michael. And yeah, just kind of finishing off, with the reminder about the 10,000 hours, 20 to 30 hours to do your license, but 10,000 hours to mastery. So just keep practicing, whenever you can, and keep building up towards those hours.
Where do you think people should go and start practicing, though? It's something that you can do, I suppose, so long as you can see all around you, check there's nothing behind you, nothing in front. You can start doing those emergency stops, can't you? You can start practicing squeezing the lever a little bit harder every single time. Even roundabouts, I suppose, is a good idea for exploring grip or even braking at an angle. We've used examples of the drills, the figure of 8 drills, so on. Riding on a white line, improving your machine control. But all of these little increments, all these little bits of tips and advice, they're all going to make us all better riders.
Yeah, 100%. Just keep practicing.
Awesome, Mark. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for all your efforts and skills that you've passed on, or knowledge you've passed on to us over these last 5 episodes. We'll be back next year with a load more, fingers crossed.
No worries. Been a pleasure, Michael.
See you, mate.
No worries. See you, mate.
There it is. As we say every time, it's all about practice. It's all about making sure that you are building up your knowledge of how good your bike is, or understanding how good your bike is, and what your bike can do, and what you can do too. So squeeze that lever a little bit more. Try it in a safe environment. See what your tires can do. See how your suspension reacts. Make those adjustments. Make sure you're comfortable, and make sure you can do everything possible to make you safer and better, and therefore more confident on the road. Awesome. I'd just like to tell you a little bit more about Bike Social membership as well. So if you're not yet a Bike Social member, there's 170 different rewards, and that means discounts and offers and competitions available for Bike Social members. It's free. Membership is free if you insure your motorbike directly with Bennett's. If you don't, or even if you don't have a motorbike, you can still reap the rewards. It's £6 a month or £60 a year. Fab, thanks so much for being a part of the process, being a viewer in this episode and this series. We've got the other episodes in this series, all part of the playlist, the link to which is below in the description. And we say thank you so much to Honda Motorcycles for being a supporter of this series. And we'll see you next time.
Honda Motorcycles are supporting this series because safety is one of their key business pillars, and their quest for safety inspires their innovations in products, technology, and education, which is why they're committed to achieving 0 traffic fatalities involving Honda mobility products worldwide by 2050.